I still remember the exact moment my stomach dropped. It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where the neighborhood feels frozen in time. No lawnmowers, no kids screaming, just the distant hum of traffic and birds chirping like they had nowhere else to be. I stepped outside with my coffee, still half asleep, planning to grab a few tools from my garage before heading out for the day. But when I pressed the garage opener, nothing happened. I pressed it again. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The small red light on the keypad was blinking. Locked. Confused, I walked around to the side door of the garage and tried the handle. Locked. My heart started pounding. I live alone. No roommates, no family nearby. Nobody should have been anywhere near my garage. Then I noticed tire marks. Fresh ones. 3 separate sets leading into my garage. At that moment, every instinct in my body screamed that something was very wrong. I rushed back into the house, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the security camera feed. And that's when I saw it. 3 massive trucks, full-size commercial pickups parked neatly inside my garage like it was their personal storage unit. And standing there, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, smug grin across her face, was her, the HOA Karen. The same woman who had spent the last year making my life miserable. And that's when I realized something terrifying. She hadn't just parked one truck. She had taken over my garage. And she thought she could get away with it. Let me rewind a bit. I moved into this HOA neighborhood 3 years ago. Quiet place, clean streets, decent people, or so I thought. Like many of you listening, I'm not anti-HOA by default. I understand the appeal. Structure, rules, order. But what I wasn't prepared for was a woman who treated HOA authority like divine power. Her real name doesn't matter. Everyone called her Karen, not behind her back, but openly. She was the vice president of the HOA board, self-appointed parking enforcer, and full-time neighborhood surveillance system. She knew who came home late, who parked crooked, whose trash cans were out 5 minutes too long, and she loved reminding you. My first encounter with her was minor, a warning notice taped to my door. Garage door must remain closed at all times. I hadn't even left it open. It was halfway down when I unloaded groceries. But fine, I ignored it. Then came the emails, then the letters, then the fines. She cited rules that didn't exist. She interpreted bylaws creatively. And anytime someone questioned her, she'd smile and say, "I'll bring it up with the board." Spoiler, she was the board. Fast forward to the week before the incident. Karen announced via HOA email that guest parking would be temporarily restricted due to community maintenance. That maintenance never happened. Instead, her son's landscaping company suddenly showed up. 3 trucks, huge ones. They didn't park on the street. They didn't park in visitor spots. They didn't even park in her driveway. No, they parked in my garage. How? Because Karen had somehow convinced the HOA locksmith to issue a temporary master code for inspection purposes. And she used it on my property without permission. When I saw those trucks on the camera feed, something inside me snapped. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. I drove straight home, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Karen was still there when I arrived, standing in my driveway like she owned it. She looked surprised to see me, then annoyed. "Oh," she said casually, "you're early." That's when I realized she hadn't made a mistake. She had planned this, and she thought I wouldn't fight back. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Karen didn't raise her voice at first. That's what made it unsettling. She stood there in my driveway, clipboard tucked under her arm, sunglasses on, posture straight, like she was conducting a routine inspection instead of trespassing on private property. "You're obstructing HOA operations," she said calmly, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "I need you to move your car." I stared at her, trying to process the sheer audacity of what I was witnessing. "My garage," I said slowly, pointing behind her, "is not an HOA facility." She tilted her head, the faintest smile pulling at her lips. "It's within HOA jurisdiction, which means temporary access is permitted when necessary." That's when I felt it, that familiar mix of rage and disbelief that only HOA stories seem to produce. I asked her again, louder this time, "Who gave you permission to enter my garage?" She flipped a page on her clipboard like she was bored. "We don't need permission for inspections." That was a lie. I knew it, she knew it, and deep down, she knew that I knew it. Behind her, the three workers stood awkwardly near the trucks, pretending not to listen. They avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable, clearly realizing something wasn't right. I turned to them. "Did she tell you this was her garage?" One of them hesitated. Karen snapped, "You don't need to answer that." That hesitation told me everything. She had lied to them too. I took a breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You have two options," I said. "You remove these trucks now, or this becomes a legal issue." Karen let out a soft laugh. "Oh, honey," she said, lowering her sunglasses just enough to look over them. "You don't want to go down that road. HOA legal fees are very expensive." That's when I realized something important. She wasn't trying to negotiate. She was trying to intimidate me. And for a brief moment, I'll be honest, it almost worked. HOAs are scary because they feel powerful. They send letters with official language. They threaten fines. They hide behind bylaws most people never read. But then I remembered something. This was my property, and she was standing on it like she owned it. I stepped closer. "You broke into my garage," I said firmly. "That's trespassing." Her smile vanished for half a second, just half. Then it came back, sharper. "Careful, I can issue fines for harassment." That's when I knew this conversation was over. There was no reasoning with her, no compromise, no apology coming. She believed she was untouchable, and people like that only learn one way. I turned around and walked back into my house. Karen shouted after me, "Don't walk away from me." I didn't respond. Inside, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and pulled up the HOA bylaws. And right there, in black and white, was everything I needed. No HOA authority over private garages, no emergency access clause, no master code usage without owner consent. She had crossed a line, and she was about to pay for it. I didn't rush. That was the key. Instead of reacting emotionally, I moved deliberately, like someone finally taking control after months of being pushed around. First, I opened my security app. Live footage showed Karen pacing in my driveway, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling another board member to back her up. The workers were inside the garage now, standing near the trucks, clearly waiting for instructions. I accessed the garage control panel. One tap, disable HOA master code. Second tap, change owner access code. Third tap, engage manual interior lock. Done. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I felt calm. About 30 seconds later, Karen tried to open the garage door. Nothing happened. She tried again. Then she walked to the side door, pulled the handle, harder this time, locked. That's when she started yelling. "What did you do?" she screamed. I opened my front door. "I secured my property," I said evenly. Her face turned red. "You can't do this." "I just did." The workers inside started knocking. One of them shouted, "Hey, we can't get out." I felt bad for them. They were caught in the middle. But this wasn't my fault. This was Karen's mess. Karen stormed toward me. "This is unlawful detention," she shouted. I pulled out my phone. "No," I said. "This is trespass prevention." She froze. "You're bluffing." I tapped my screen. "Sheriff's Department," I said, "calling now." Her confidence cracked, just slightly. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "Good," she snapped. "Call them." So I did. The sheriff arrived about 15 minutes later, long enough for the entire neighborhood to notice something was happening. Doors cracked open, curtains moved, phones came out. Karen stood front and center when the deputy stepped out of his vehicle. She launched into her story immediately. "He's illegally detaining workers and interfering with HOA operations." The sheriff raised a hand. "Let's slow down," he said, "one at a time." He turned to me. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yes." "And those vehicles are inside your garage?" "Yes." "Did you give permission?" "No." He nodded slowly, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, do you have written authorization?" She stammered. "Well, as HOA vice president," he cut her off. "That's not authorization." Her face went pale. I showed him everything. Security footage, property deed, HOA bylaws, emails from Karen threatening fines. He watched quietly. Then he sighed. "Ma'am," he said, turning back to her, "you entered private property without consent." She tried to interrupt. He didn't let her. "That's trespassing." Silence. You could hear a pin drop.
The workers were released. Karen wasn't arrested, but she was cited. The sheriff explained that further action could follow. The HOA board was notified. By Monday, Karen was suspended pending investigation. Neighbors started talking. Stories came out. Similar harassment, similar threats. She wasn't powerful. She was unchecked. 3 months later, Karen moved out. The HOA issued an apology. Master codes revoked. Policies rewritten. And I learned something important. HOAs only work when people challenge abuse. If you're listening to this and dealing with someone like her, you're not powerless. Document everything. Stand firm. And don't be afraid to call the authorities when lines are crossed. Because sometimes the only way to stop a Karen is to lock the door she never should have opened.